The wind changed first sharp, metallic, like it carried the scent of blood, and that was when Elias Crow realized something was terribly wrong. He reined in his chestnut stallion atop the ridge, staring down at the moonlit basin below. The desert was too quiet. No crickets. No distant coyote. Not even the soft rustle of sagebrush. It was as if the entire land had paused, holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Elias pushed his hat back and narrowed his eyes. "Where the hell is the firelight?" he muttered. For 3 days he had been tracking smoke-thin columns rising at dawn, fading by noon. But tonight, the plains should have been glowing with the orange warmth of Apache campfires. Instead, darkness swallowed the entire valley. His jaw tightened. Something was wrong down there. His horse stomped uneasily, snorting into the cold night air. Elias Crow wasn't a lawman, nor a scout, nor the kind of man who chased danger for glory. He was a wanderer, a man whose past had places he no longer visited and names he no longer spoke. But one thing he understood better than anyone was silence. The desert taught him that. Silence always meant something. And tonight it meant fear. He clicked his tongue, nudging his horse down the steep slope. As he descended into the basin, the smell hit him neck smoke, old and bitter, like something had burned hours ago but never properly died out. Elias's hand instinctively went to the Colt on his hip. He moved slowly, every sense awake. When he reached the edge of the clearing, he finally saw it. The Apache village was gone. Not abandoned. Not moved. Destroyed. Huts collapsed. Blankets torn. Clay pots shattered into dust. Arrows scattered, broken under boots. The sight made Elias's chest tighten in a way he didn't expect. He didn't know these people, not personally, but he knew what devastation looked like. This wasn't a storm. This was an attack. The moon caught the glint of metal in the sand. Elias crouched and picked it up a rifle shell. Fresh. "Damn," he whispered. "Why? Who? And where were the bodies?" He scanned the shadows. No dead, no wounded. No women or children. Nothing. It wasn't a massacre. It was a kidnapping. Elias stood slowly, his breath visible in the cold air. His instincts screamed at him to leave. This wasn't his fight, but something kept him rooted to the ground. Maybe it was the strange weight in his chest. Maybe the ghost of a promise he made years ago. Maybe he simply couldn't walk away from the smell of injustice. He moved deeper into the ruins until a faint sound reached him. A cough. Elias froze. He pivoted, hand on his Colt, scanning the darkness. Another cough, weak, labored. He followed the sound to a collapsed hut. The roof poles had caved in, smoke residue blackening the edges. He grabbed a pole and heaved it aside. Dust rose in a gray cloud. Someone was under there. He pushed debris away until a fragile shape emerged, a man, maybe 60, maybe more, wrapped in the traditional woven cloth of the Apache elders. His hair was long, braided, his face painted with ash and blood. Elias knelt beside him. "You alive, old man?" he asked quietly. The elder's eyes fluttered open, dark, sharp, ancient. He struggled for air. "You are not one of them," he rasped. "One of who?" The elder grabbed Elias's wrist with surprising strength. "White riders. 30, maybe more. Took our people." His voice cracked, but his eyes burned with fury. "They ride north. Before dawn." Elias swallowed hard. North meant the mining camps, lawless, brutal men hungry for cheap labor and cruel entertainment. A settlement of Apache women and children taken there. God, Elias clenched his teeth. "Why did they leave you alive?" he asked. The elder coughed again, blood staining his chin. "Because I stopped them. Long enough for one to escape. My granddaughter, Alona." His breath hitched. She ran east, into the canyons. Elias's heart thudded once. East was deadly at night. The ravines ate men whole. She will die in the dark, the elder whispered. Unless... His eyes locked onto Elias like he had known him for years, not seconds. Unless a man of iron goes after her. Elias blinked. Man of iron? You got the wrong fella. The elder shook his head weakly. No, the desert. Sent you. Elias exhaled sharply. He hated when old people spoke in riddles. He hated even more when he felt the truth in them. He wasn't a savior. He wasn't a hero. He was just passing through. But those riders, that destroyed village, that terrified girl somewhere in the canyon, he couldn't walk away. Where exactly did she run? Elias asked, knowing he'd already made up his mind. The elder's trembling hand lifted and pointed toward the darkness east of the village. Follow the wind, he murmured. She carries a bone knife. She will fight you. She trusts no man. Elias almost smiled. Sounds like someone I'd like. The elder's eyes softened, just barely. Find her, he whispered. And if you can, save my people. His hand fell to the dirt. Elias lowered his head for a moment, not in prayer, but in respect. Then he stood, adjusting his hat, rolling his shoulders, feeling the cold steel resolve settle in his bones. All right then, he muttered. Let's bring your granddaughter home. He whistled low, and his stallion trotted up, ears flicked back nervously. Elias swung into the saddle and rode east, the moon guiding him toward the jagged silhouettes of canyon walls. The entrance was narrow 2 stone pillars towering like giants guarding a secret world. Elias dismounted and let his horse drink from a shallow pool. The canyon swallowed sound, echoing every drip, every breath. He heard something. A scrape, a soft thud. Then silence. He crouched, eyes scanning. Someone was watching him. He could feel it. That prickling sensation across his shoulders. Slow, controlled, dangerous. He stayed still. Minutes dragged by. Then, a whisper of movement behind him. Elias spun, catching the glint of moonlight on metal. A knife, small, bone-handled, razor-sharp. He grabbed the wrist mid-swing. A fierce, furious cry tore through the canyon, echoing off the walls. The girl fought like a storm, kicking, twisting, growling through clenched teeth. She moved with trained precision and wild desperation. Easy, Elias barked, trying not to hurt her. I'm not one of them. She drove her knee toward his ribs. He blocked it. Barely. Damn it, stop. But she didn't. She struck again, this time slashing at his forearm. The blade sliced skin. Hot blood trickled. Elias yanked her close, pinning her arms without force, but with firm control. Listen, he hissed. Your grandfather sent me. That made her freeze. Her chest heaved as she stared up at him, face smeared with dust. Hair braided tight with feathers and small turquoise beads, eyes burning black with terror and fury. You lie, she whispered. No, I found him in the ruins. He's alive. Hurt, but alive. Her lips trembled. For the first time, vulnerability cracked through her hardened expression. My people. She breathed. Taken, Elias said softly. North. I'm going after them. She swallowed slowly, her knife clutched tight even as he held her arms. Why? She asked. They are not your blood. Elias looked at her steadily. Because someone should? Silence stretched heavy, fragile, full of meanings neither dared speak. Then she stepped back, sliding her knife away. I am Alona, she said quietly. Daughter of Talako's son. Elias, he replied. She studied him for a long moment. You will not make it alone, she said. Those men, they know the land. You do not. You offering to guide me? He asked with a half-smirk. I am offering, she said with the seriousness of a vow, to avenge my people. The moon shifted, lighting her face strong, determined, far older in spirit than her years. Elias felt something shift inside him too, a sharp awareness, an unspoken connection. All right then, he said. We ride together. She nodded once. Before sunrise we hunt, she answered. Beside them, the canyon wind whispered like a warning or a blessing. And far to the north, the men who destroyed her village had no idea a storm was coming. A storm with the face of a determined Apache girl. And a man the desert itself had sent. Elias Crow didn't sleep that night, neither did Alona. They rested only long enough for the canyon walls to bleed from black to deep purple, the first hint of sunrise brushing the stone like war paint. Alona stood at the mouth of the canyon, scanning the horizon with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had washed the dust from her face in the small pool, tied her braids tighter, and repainted the red streak across her cheek, a mark of resolve. Elias watched her from where he tightened the saddle strap on his stallion. You sure you're ready? He asked. Alona didn't look at him. I have been ready since the moment they took my people. Her voice was steady, but Elias caught the faint tremble beneath it, a tremble only someone who'd lost everything overnight could hide. He mounted up. We ride north, he said. Your grandfather said so. Alona finally turned, eyes narrowing. Talako is strong, but his memory of directions may not be perfect in pain. Elias raised a brow. You think he was wrong? No, she said. But the men who took my people, they will not take the direct route. They will mask their tracks. They know the Apache will send someone. Elias almost smiled. You mean someone like you? She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. She mounted her own horse, a slender black mare with a scar on its shoulder, and together they rode out of the canyon, the air still cold but full of promise. The desert north of the village stretched endlessly, the sand glowing gold under the rising sun. Elias's stallion moved smoothly, but he kept glancing at the terrain, noticing disturbed patches of dirt, boot impressions, and occasional broken sage stems. You see these? He asked. Alona nodded without slowing. They move in haste. Good. Good? Yes, she said. Haste makes mistakes. Mistakes leave signs. She dismounted suddenly, crouching beside a faint depression in the sand. She brushed her fingers lightly across it. Wagon wheel, she said. Heavy, many riders beside it, meaning they're carrying your people. She stood slowly, and moving slower than they wish. Elias joined her, squatting beside the track. How far ahead do you think they are? Half a day. Maybe less. He whistled softly. Closer than I expected. Alona didn't smile. She didn't relax. She didn't show relief. Instead, she mounted again and urged her horse forward. We must catch them before they reach Dead Man's Flats, she said. Elias's head snapped up. That's where they'd sell them? The mining camp? Yes, and if they reach the camp, her jaw tightened. The tribe will disappear, forever. He didn't need more explanation. The camps were hellhole's lawless pits run by greedy foremen, who treated human beings like tools they could break and replace. They rode faster. Around midday, the heat settled like an iron blanket over the land. Sweat dripped down Elias's face. Alona, though used to harsher suns, breathed heavier too. She shaded her eyes and suddenly pulled her mare to a stop. Elias halted beside her. What is it? She pointed toward the horizon. A thin line of dust rose in the distance, almost invisible like smoke made of earth. Riders, she muttered. Elias's grip tightened on the reins. Could be them. No, she said quickly. Too few. How many? 3. Elias exhaled. Scouts, then? Alona nodded. They watch the rear. Make sure no one follows. And I suppose we qualify as someone. She didn't answer. Instead, she lowered herself in the saddle, eyes hardening, breath slowing. Elias recognized the posture. Alona, he said, don't do anything reckless. She gave him a glance over her shoulder. I am not reckless. I am prepared. That's exactly what reckless people say before doing something reckless. She clicked her tongue and her mare sped forward. Damn it, Elias growled, kicking his stallion into a gallop. The 3 riders appeared minutes later, rough-looking men in dust-stained coats and wide-brimmed hats, rifles slung across their shoulders. They sat atop lean horses, faces scruffy, eyes narrowed in suspicion as Alona approached. She slowed her mare strategically, making herself appear alone. One rider tilted his head. Well, look here, he said, voice thick with arrogance. A little Apache bird flying far from her nest. Another laughed. Maybe we should clip her wings. Elias rolled his eyes. He knew exactly the type men who had never faced real consequences and thought cruelty was a form of courage. Alona's stare sharpened like an eagle's. Where is my tribe? She demanded. The riders exchanged glances, amused. Which one? The first man smirked. The old or the young? Elias felt the air around him tighten. He drew his horse closer, resting a hand on his holster, but he didn't draw. Not yet. Alona's voice dropped an octave. You will tell me, or you will bleed. The men burst out laughing. One spit into the sand. She talks big for someone alone. That was the moment Elias rode up beside her, towering over the riders. His presence alone changed the air heavy, still, electric. The men stopped laughing. The shortest one squinted. Who the hell are you? Elias tipped his hat slightly. Someone who hates bullies. That wiped the smirk off the man's face. The leader's eyes flicked between Elias and Alona. 2 of you against 3 of us? Elias shrugged. I'd like the odds better if there were 4 of you. Alona didn't hide her smirk this time. The smallest rider lunged for his rifle. Elias shot the gun clean out of his hand. The crack echoed across the desert, sharp and unforgiving. Now, Elias said calmly, lowering his smoking Colt, we're going to have a conversation. The men froze, sweat forming on their brows. One swallowed hard. What do you want? Alona leaned forward in her saddle. Where is my tribe? The leader stumbled over his words. They're ahead. With Royce. Royce? Elias repeated. The foreman of the flats? The man nodded frantically. He pays well for Apache labor. Better than the others. Elias's jaw tightened. And the women? The leader looked away. Elias pushed his horse closer. And the women? He repeated, voice low and lethal. The rider whispered, sold separately. Elias felt something cold settle in his bones, colder than any desert night. Alona's voice shook, but not with fear. With pure, murderous rage. You tell Royce, she said, that I am coming. And so am I, Elias added. The leader looked like he wanted to melt into the sand. Get off your horses, Alona ordered. They obeyed instantly. She tied their wrists with their own reins, leaving them on foot under the brutal sun. Elias wiped his gun barrel and holstered the Colt. You think they'll last out here? He asked quietly. Yes, Alona said. Long enough to reconsider their choices. They mounted and rode away, leaving the men swearing behind them. Hours passed. The land changed slowly from desert to rough scrub, the earth darker, the rocks jagged like broken bones. Wind howled through the cliffs, the sound like distant screams. Alona slowed her mare. "Here," she said. "Look." Elias peered ahead. In the valley below lay a thin trail of debris-shredded cloth, a broken pot, a child's beaded bracelet. Alona dismounted, knees hitting the dirt before Elias could stop her. She lifted the bracelet with trembling hands. "Talako made this," she whispered. Her breath hitched, but she didn't cry. She simply stood, shoulders rigid, eyes burning with a new kind of fire. Elias stepped beside her. "We're close." She nodded, voice barely a whisper. Too close. Because at that moment, a sound drifted up the valley, faint, rhythmic, metallic. Not wind, not animals, not nature. It was the sound of hammers striking iron. Elias and Alona exchanged a glance. "The camp," she breathed. Elias nodded slowly. Dead Man's Flats. Smoke curled from behind the ridge. Voices echoed faintly, carried by the wind. Alona's muscles coiled tight. "They think my people are weak. They think we do not fight." Elias rested a hand on his saddle horn. "You ready for what comes next?" She looked at him with fire in her eyes. "I was born ready." The wind howled again, ripping through the cliffs, as if warning them or urging them forward. And together, Elias and Alona rode down the ridge, toward the place where nightmares lived, toward the men who held her people, toward the battle they both knew could change everything. The hammers grew louder with every step Elias and Alona took. Dead Man's Flats was not a town. It was a wound carved into the desert, a filthy hollow where smoke rose from makeshift smelters and desperate men labored under the sun until their bodies gave out. The two rode until their horses could go no farther without being seen. Elias slid off his stallion, scanning the ridge above the flats. Alona crouched beside him. "Too open," she whispered. "If we go down the main slope, they'll see us." Elias nodded. The camp sprawled across the basin-rusted mining carts, scattered tents, wooden shacks leaning like dead men. The mining pit itself glowed with dull heat. A line of captives worked at the far end shoveling gravel, moving crates, hauling sacks of ore. Women and children were corralled near a water trough, guarded by two grim-looking men with rifles. Alona squeezed her fists. "That is my aunt," she whispered, voice trembling, pointing to a woman struggling to lift a crate. "And they're my cousin's daughter." Elias's jaw tightened. "And there," she continued, eyes narrowing, "is my Uncle Keem." Keem was being shoved toward the smelter by a cruel-looking guard. His legs buckled, and a whip cracked across his back. Alona surged forward, ready to run straight into danger. Elias grabbed her wrist. "No!" She snapped her head toward him, fury in every line of her face. "They are suffering. And if you rush in, more will suffer, including you," he shot back. "We need a plan." Alona trembled not with fear, but rage. She tore her wrist free. "Plan fast," she hissed. Elias scanned the terrain again. "There," he said, pointing to the abandoned ore chutes above the camp-long wooden slides once used to pour rock into carts. "If we climb those rocks, we can reach the old supervisor's shack. It overlooks the whole camp, and from there—" Alona challenged. "From there," Elias said, "we see who's running this nightmare. We find Royce." The name made Alona's expression harden. "The one who bought my people," she whispered. Elias nodded. "The one who's going to regret it." The climb up the rocky slope was grueling jagged stones, loose gravel, the sun beating down mercilessly. Alona moved quickly, practically gliding over the rocks with a hunter's grace. Elias followed close behind, careful and quiet. Halfway up, Alona paused, listening. A faint voice drifted through the hot wind. "Move faster." Royce wants those crates loaded before dusk." Elias shot Alona a look. "Sounds like the man himself isn't far." They reached the supervisor's shack, an old, rotting structure half collapsed against the cliff. Its windows were broken, the door hanging crooked. Elias peeked through the window. A man paced the small room below, tall, ash-blonde hair, coat crisp despite the filth around him. His boots were polished. His hands were clean. The kind of man who let others do his dirty work. "Royce," Elias whispered. Alona's breath hitched with hatred. Royce leaned over a map on his desk. "Move the women tonight," he said to his foreman. "The buyers from Red Rock arrive tomorrow. The men can work another 3 days before shipment." Shipment. They were planning to move the tribe like cattle. Alona's jaw clenched so hard Elias thought she might break her teeth. The foreman, a thick-necked brute with a scar across his forehead, grunted. "What about the elder? The old one we left behind?" Royce shrugged casually. "If the dessert didn't kill him last night, someone else will. We got what we needed." Alona inhaled sharply. Elias grabbed her arm gently. "We're going to take them down," he whispered. "But not by barging in blind." Alona closed her eyes briefly, willing patience into her bones. When she opened them again, they were sharp and clear. "What is the plan?" she whispered. Elias glanced down at the camp. "We take out the guards near the captives, quietly. Then we get your people armed. The moment they're ready, we strike from 2 sides, your tribe from the ground." "And us from above," Alona finished. Elias nodded. "Like thunder." A faint, reluctant smile touched her lips. "Talako always said the desert gives storms to those who deserve them," she whispered. Elias held her gaze for a long moment. "Then let's be the storm." The first move, they moved at dusk. Shadows grew long across the camp, orange light flickering like fire over the dust. Alona and Elias slid down the rocks behind the corral, landing silently just feet from the guards. 2 men leaned against a wagon, talking lazily, rifles leaning on the wooden rail. Elias motioned. Alona nodded. They moved like 2 halves of a single instinct, silent, precise. Elias came from behind the first guard, covering his mouth and twisting hard. The man slumped quietly to the ground. Alona stepped behind the second and used the blunt edge of her bone knife to strike downward behind his ear. He collapsed instantly. She exhaled slowly. "This is for my people," she whispered. Elias knelt, checking the guard's pockets for keys. He found them. He tossed the ring to Alona. She caught it mid-air. "Free them," Elias whispered. "I'll cover you." Alona nodded, darting to the wooden enclosure where the women and children were kept. She fumbled briefly before sliding the key into the lock. It clicked. The gate swung open. The first woman to emerge gasped. "Alona!" she cried, pulling her into a fierce embrace. More voices joined, hands touching her face, her hair, her arms half in disbelief, half in desperate relief. Alona's composure cracked for the first time. Tears shimmered in her eyes. "We must be silent," she whispered. "The men are still captured. We need them armed." Keem limped forward through the group. Though beaten and weak, his eyes burned strong. "Your grandfather?" he whispered. "Alive," Alona said. "Injured, but alive." Keem bowed his head briefly in gratitude. Elias stepped beside her. "We don't have long. Royce is planning to move everyone by dawn." Keem straightened. "Then we move tonight." He turned to the others. "Take the guards' rifles. Spread them out. Stay low." The tribe moved with quiet efficiency, years of survival instinct taking over. Alona looked at Elias. "Now?" she whispered. He checked the position of the guards at the far end of the camp. "Almost." But the moment he said it, A shout cut through the camp. "Hey, who opened the corral?" Elias cursed under his breath. "So much for quiet," he muttered. Alona stepped forward, tightening her grip on her knife. "This was never going to be quiet," she whispered. The reckoning chaos erupted instantly. Guards lunged for guns. Women pulled rifles from fallen men. Children scattered to safety behind boulders. Elias fired first, dropping a guard sprinting toward them with a shotgun. Keem yelled, "To the pit!" "The men are there!" Alona sprinted toward the pit, her braid flying behind her like a streak of shadow. Elias covered her, firing twice more, taking down 2 more guards. The camp was a storm of screams, gunfire, and pounding boots. Alona slid down a pile of gravel into the pit. Dozens of Apache men were chained together at the ankles, their wrists bloodied from hours of labor. One looked up and gasped. "Alona, you live?" She didn't waste breath. "Stand back," she shouted, raising a pickaxe she'd grabbed from the ground. Elias joined her, firing at another guard charging down the slope. "Break the chains!" he yelled. Alona swung. The iron link snapped after 3 hard blows. Keem arrived with 3 men carrying stolen rifles. More chains broke. More captives rose. They armed themselves. The storm had begun. Above them, Roy stepped out of the supervisor's shack, eyes wide with fury. "What the hell is happening?" he roared. Elias aimed straight at him, but Royce dove behind a barrel, bullets shattering wood. "Cowards!" Royce screamed. "Kill them all!" His men rushed forward. But they weren't fighting helpless captives anymore. They were fighting a tribe fueled by rage, loss, and the will to survive. Alona's voice cut through the chaos. "To the ridge! Drive them upward!" Elias understood instantly. The terrain above was narrow, steep, perfect for trapping the remaining guards. He fired 3 more shots, covering the tribe's advance. Royce scrambled up the back slope, panting, desperate. Elias followed. Alona was right behind him. They reached the ridge just as Royce stumbled onto the flat top, gasping for breath, revolver trembling in his hand. "You," he panted at Elias, "stay back." Elias stepped forward. "You bought people like cattle. Beat them. Work them near death." Royce's eyes darted wildly. "So what?" "They're savages." Alona stepped beside Elias, her knife gleaming in the moonlight. "We are many things," she whispered, "but we are not savages." Royce fired. Elias shoved Alona aside. The bullet grazed his shoulder. He bit back a groan, lifted his Colt, and fired once. Royce staggered backward, eyes wide, before toppling off the ridge and disappearing into the darkness below. Silence followed. Alona turned to Elias, breath shaking. "You saved me." Elias sheathed his gun with a wince. "Wouldn't be the first time today." She let out a sound halfway between a sob and a breath of relief. Below them, the tribe cheered in victory. Above them, the wind whispered over the ridge. And between Elias and Alona, something unspoken sparked to life. The first boom shook the valley like the sky itself had cracked open. Elias didn't need a second sound to know the ridge was under attack. The echo carried the unmistakable rhythm of repeating rifles, too fast, too sharp, too cold to belong to any Apache warrior. He sprinted across the clearing, boots throwing dust. "Talako!" he shouted. "Where's Alona?" Talako met him halfway, breath harsh, expression grim. "She's at the far spring. Riders are coming from the north. This is no scouting group." Elias's heart slammed in his chest. "Then we get her now." They ran up the narrow red clay path cutting through juniper and stone shelves. The rising wind carried the bitter smell of smoke. Talako hissed, "They're burning the ridge." A crack split the air, a tree snapping under heat. They pushed through brush and reached the spring. Alona looked up from her herbs, eyes tightening at their expressions. "Riders," Elias said, "minutes away." She immediately gathered her things. "Then they know about the painted stones." Talako growled, "Someone betrayed us." There was no time to dwell on it. Alona led them up the canyon path, a steep climb between fractured sandstone. Smoke drifted heavier now. The fire had begun crawling along the ridge. Elias pushed Alona ahead, determined to protect her. Talako crouched suddenly. Riders below. They peered down at 15 gunmen circling the clearing. Torches swung low over huts. Faces Elias recognized McCarver's men. "Why here?" Elias muttered. "They're after the ceremonial artifacts," Talako replied. "Collectors in far cities will pay a fortune." Alona's eyes hardened. "We need to get the children out." Talako nodded. "Elias, you create a diversion on the East Ridge." Elias's jaw tightened. "And you?" "I rescue the little ones," Talako said calmly. "Alona comes with me." Elias touched her cheek briefly. "Be careful." She whispered, "Everything that touches my people touches me. And that touches you." A single look passed among them, then they split. Elias sprinted to the eastern slope. Under a dead pine lay a pile of dry timber. Perfect. He struck his flint, lit it, and the fire roared upward. But he needed noise. He shoved a large boulder free. It tumbled down the path like thunder, panicking the outlaws. Then he lit a branch, raised a torch, and let out a fierce Apache war cry Talako had taught him. 2 gunmen spun their horses toward him. Good. He ran. Meanwhile, Alona and Talako slid down the opposite slope. Flames were spreading, turning the sky red. Women shouted to gather children. Talako froze. A young outlaw guarded the horses. "I'll distract him," Alona whispered. She threw a stone. It hit brush. The outlaw turned. Talako struck him silently, knocking him out. They rushed to the children, 4 little ones trembling behind a hut. "Quiet as river stones," Alona whispered, guiding them. They were almost to the hidden passage when a gun clicked. McCarver stepped out, rifle raised. "Well, hell," he drawled. "Look at what I found." Talako stepped in front of the children. "You do not belong here," McCarver sneered. "I don't need to belong. I just need coin." His finger tightened. A rifle cracked. McCarver fell backward, screaming. Elias stood behind him on the ridge, rifle smoking. Talako shouted, "Elias!" but Elias staggered. Blood soaked his side. He had been hit. Alona screamed his name. Talako reached Elias and hauled him up. "Move! Fire is closing." They escaped. Into the narrow rock corridor as flames swallowed the ridge behind them. Elias collapsed on the far side, breathing hard. Alona pressed her hands to the wound. "Stay with me," he whispered, "not leaving you." By dusk, the battle was over. The tribe survived. McCarver's gang scattered or captured. Elias lay inside Talako's lodge, weak but alive. Alona never left his side. The elder entered. Everyone fell silent. Talako spoke first. "Elias saved our children." "He saved all of us." The elder nodded and placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "Elias," he said, "you saved my tribe. Now I give you my Apache daughter as a wife." Alona's breath trembled. Her eyes shone. Elias looked at her. "If she have me, I already chose you," she whispered. She laced her fingers with his, and with the blessing of the tribe, they sealed a union carved from danger, loyalty, and the fire they survived together.